So my talk title this morning is A Jewish Christmas. Last week I had said that I encouraged everyone to do something nice for themselves during the holidays. We do so much nice things for everybody else. It's nice to do something for yourself. So I decided I would take my own advice. And instead of giving the talk that I was going to give, I planned I was going to do something that would be interesting and fun for me. So that's how we ended up on a Jewish Christmas. Now, you know, I love history a great deal, and the history of Christmas is fascinating. And so I want to explore the history of Christmas a little bit and the Jewish influences on the season. Most of us don't realize that Christmas really is a modern invention. It largely comes from two sources: Victorian England, which really wasn't that long ago, and for Americans and for most of the world now, Hollywood. And with Hollywood came a generous portion of Jewish sensibilities. Yeah. Today we hear people going around talking about a war on Christmas. Well, actually, the truth of the matter is there has already been a war on Christmas, and it came very, very close to succeeding. The war on Christmas was launched and fought vigorously by the Puritans of England. Now, before the Puritans took control of England, Christmas was celebrated for 12 days. Yes, that was a real thing. It's just not a song. That's how Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth would have celebrated the holiday for 12 days. But then the Puritans came along. If you don't know much about the Puritans, they're best described as a group of angry people who were deeply worried that somebody somewhere was having a good time. Yeah. And they were going to do everything in their power to put a stop to it. So they got a hold of Christmas. Now, biblically, they had an argument because Scripture does not give a date for the birth of Christ. Only two of the Gospels mention the birth of Christ at all. The others just start with his ministry. And the two that do mention it, they don't tell the same story. So the Puritans, much like our Seventh-day Adventist friends, just choose not to celebrate it at all. And for the Puritans, it became a very pious display of public piety to show you were working on Christmas Day. You know, to start building something or start some project on Christmas Day, just to prove to everybody else how pious you were. Now, miraculously, and it really is miraculous, around the same time, three cultural trends popped up in England, and they brought Christmas roaring back. The first one that I had not really heard or thought about very much was the establishment of the British Postal Service and the invention of the Christmas card. It's an amazing thing that things have to be invented. Somebody invented the Christmas card. And how that happened was that one of the guys that had invented the post office, he was bombarded with letters at Christmas time. And for Victorian people to get a letter and not reply to it was the height of disrespect. You had to answer. And so Sir Henry Cole, he printed up, and it's actually that card there. That was the first Christmas card so that he could send out to everybody that was sending him a card. And that was the start of our tradition of sending Christmas card. He printed up 1,000 of them. They all sold out. And because the Postal Service was cheap, you could send a card to anybody for a penny, it became a phenomenon. And suddenly the whole nation, it was a national obsession. And so people were sending Christmas cards to everybody. And ironically enough, the men that had founded the post office, they were horrified horrified that this very serious, the post office, it was going to be about science and business. They didn't want people sending goodwill. Keep your goodwill to yourself. Don't bother up the post office. But amazingly, because of the influx of the holiday mail, it made the post office a success. So postcards were the first cultural invention or influence. The second one was the introduction of the Christmas tree, a completely pagan tradition. Nowhere in Scripture do you ever hear that Mary was nursing the little baby Jesus and the shepherd showed up with a tree and the wise men just happened to have some ornaments to put on it. That did not happen. The Christmas tree was a pagan tradition well before Christianity ever got to Europe. And the people would bring trees into the house to have a little greenery when the season was at its darkest. Because in the dark time of winter, you need a little bit of hope that life's going to continue and that life survives the darkness. And that's how the Christmas tree got to England. Now, at the time on the throne of the British Empire was Queen Victoria, and she had married Prince Albert, the German prince, and she loved everything about Albert. She particularly liked his body. Victoria was not a Victorian. She liked to tell everybody else what to do, but she did not include herself in that. So everything about Albert she loved. And so when he introduced her to the tradition of the Christmas tree, it suddenly became very popular among the British elite, and very soon it was everywhere. Now, the third influence was a book, Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And this was the most profound of them. And this is very interesting because in the Christmas Carol, Dickens, he creates a whole new spirituality around the holiday. In his book, Christ is only mentioned just once by Tiny Tim. But there's a whole spirituality about, giving and loving and being kind, and how we're all here to be conduits for God's blessing. Dickens didn't just tell a story, he made Christmas matter. He was able to influence that. So those three influences came together separately, nobody planned them, and they brought Christmas back to life in England. In America, after World War II, it was the baby boomers, along with music and television and movies, that brought Christmas roaring back to life, and it's the way we celebrate it today. And from that was a good bit of influence by Jewish creatives. Most of our Christmas music was written by people who never celebrated Christmas. Irving Berlin, White Christmas. Johnny Marks, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Rocking Around the Christmas Tree. Where would poor little Brenda Lee be if he hadn't written Rocking Around the Christmas Tree? Most of the music we actually sing at Christmas time was by Jewish authors. Now, the one person I'm going to talk about today, because he produced a Christmas story that I love, it's not very easily found these days, but that is Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg was 22 years old when he was hired by Universal Studios. He was so young that the security guards would not even let him on the studio because they couldn't believe he was actually working there. Now, his first real assignment was of a TV show. It was Rod Serling's Night Gallery. And the star that they gave him to direct on that show was none other than Joan Crawford. I would have just as you've heard that story about the drunk raccoon that got in the liquor store this past week. I would have rather tried to domesticate a drunk raccoon than to direct Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford had already won an Oscar before Steven Spielberg had been born. And at this point of her career, Hollywood had used her up. They had discarded her. Television was a step down. She felt it like it was a humiliation. And here she had this 20-year-old kid there to direct her. She was furious. And she was known just to eat up directors. And so here he was, 22 years old. But he did something amazing. He approached her with humility and respect, and she melted away. When the show was wrapped up, she personally sent a note to the executives. She said, hire this guy. He's got a brilliant future. Now, she was right. He went on and he created things like E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, Private and Saving Ryan. And one of the things that I love most is he had an animated TV series. And from that, he created Pinky and the Brain Christmas Special. If you've never seen it, it's about two little lab rats. One of them is Brain. He's brilliant, he's genius, he's determined to rule the world because he's smarter than everybody else, and he's going to take it over. Pinky, he's his goofy sidekick. He's tender, he's sweet, he's had one too many gummies. Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. So for the Christmas episode, Brain invents a toy, the Noodle Noggin. And in this toy, he has a mind control device so he can finally take over the world. This is going to work this time. Meanwhile, Pinky, the big-hearted, the only thing he's worried about is writing and getting his letter off to Santa Claus. So throughout the whole episode, they go through one trauma after another. They have to get to Santa so that they can get the toy created at Santa's workshop and get it shipped out to everybody in the world. They actually get one to Bill Clinton in the White House. And on Christmas morning, everything's set to go. They're ready to throw the lever, and Brain's going to be able to give his commands out to the world and finally take it over. But unfortunately, in that very moment, Pinky realizes he never got his letter to Santa Claus off, and he dissolves. He is just bereft. He's crying. He's just an emotional puddle. And there is Brain, moments away, become the ruler of the world. And he is just furious with him. He can't believe that his best friend is such a numbskull. And so he barks at him. He snatches the letter away. And right before he takes over the world, he starts to read the letter. And what he realizes from the letter is that Pinky had wrote the letter to Santa, and he didn't ask anything for himself. But he's told Santa, he says, I have a friend, Brain. He tries so hard. He never gets encouragement. He fails all the time. He wants to do the right thing. If there's anything left in that big old red bag of yours, can you give the world to Brain? And Brain, reading this is just undone. And instead of commanding the world to obey him, he tells everyone just to have a Merry Christmas, the best Christmas ever. Instead of domination, he chooses love. Instead of control, he opens up to transformation. The show ends with the two of them back in their little cage, opening up Christmas presents, not as conqueror and assistant, but as companions changed by love. The world won't be saved by force. It will be saved by love. This is the ministry of Christ. It's not the strong who conquer, but the gentle who transform the world. In Scripture, it says, the meek shall inherit the earth. The meek will inherit the earth. You know, this past week, I spent the whole week up in Atlanta. I've been visiting my best friend of 45 years. He hasn't been doing so well, and he wanted me to come up so he could go over his will. Now, it was a conversation that neither of us wanted to have, but I knew I had to do it. That as painful as it was, I had to honor him and let him tell me what he wanted in the last wishes of his life. Now, hopefully he's going to be around for a little bit more, but it was coming time that he needed to do this. And as I was listening to him telling me how he wanted his funds dispersed, and he's blessed to have a lot of funds, and I'm in them, so there was a little bit of interest on my part. But I knew that I had to tell him the most important thing, that I had to tell him that it really didn't matter what he was giving. I was grateful for it. I'm be grateful that it would come my way. But the most important thing was that he had been in my life and that I loved him. Now, you may not know, but most guys do not go around telling each other they love them. It's easy in the movies, but in real life, to step up and to tell somebody that you love them, how much they mean to you, that's a challenge. That takes some courage. And when you're able to do it, it doesn't really matter how anyone responds, because it's about opening yourself up to that sort of honesty. And I've learned that the harder the conversation feels, if it's coming from love, it's essential that you step up and you do it. It's essential that you step up and you share those words. And so when I told him how important he was in my life, it opened the door for us and gave us permission to talk about our 45-year journey together and all we've seen and all we've been through and how we've supported each other. And it's one of the greatest gifts I've been given. Now, I was coming home on yesterday morning, and as I was getting on the airplane, there was, sometimes people get together. There's a German term for it, I can't recall right now, but there's an energy of the crowd. When people get together, there's an energy. And for this plane, the energy wasn't good. The plane was late. The crew were testy. And for some unknown reason, they could not get this group of people on their plane with all their luggage. People almost bring chicken coops onto planes these days and try to store them in the overhead. It's like, what is your problem? So they just couldn't get them to do it. They couldn't marshal them in. So everybody was late. They were barking over the loudspeakers. The pilot came out. Eventually, we got on the runway. We headed up. As soon as those tires left the ground, there was a 6-month-old little boy with the lungs of an opera star. This kid could belt out. He could fill up the Lincoln Auditorium if he wanted to. And he was wailing, not in a gentle sort of way. He had lungs of leather, and he was blasting that whole plane. And you could just feel the tension building in the plane. And so going through this, I finally thought to myself, well, I've got to do something. So there was nothing else to do but to start doing prayers. So and probably that's the most powerful thing I could do. And so I started praying for him. He was obviously in pain. And, his ears, I started praying that things were, level out for him. I started praying for the mom because I could just feel her trauma that all these people on this plane were just, hating this. And she was feeling responsible for it all. And then I started praying for everyone on the plane, that we all just take a moment and just have some human compassion. Now, the moment the seatbelt sign turned off, she stood up. She got out of her seat and she stood up, and the baby quieted down. And he never made another peek the whole journey. She stood up and she walked back. I think she was just going to try to keep him more comfortable. So she was walking down the aisle. I was on the seat by the aisle. And I had made it my intentions. I was going to catch her eyes and just smile at her, just to let her know that there were people who understood. It was just a human thing. And so I was trying to catch her eyes, but instead of catching her eyes, this little rugrat, he deliberately caught mine. And we had a moment. It was as if he was recognizing exactly what I had been up to. For love or fear, for good or worse, life responds to us. Every moment is a chance to lead with our hearts, to step through our egos, barriers of you'll make a fool of yourself, you'll look stupid, you'll be rejected. To step through that and to be a conduit for Spirit's blessings right where we are. The final part of A Christmas Carol, they're back in the lab and Pinky gives Brain a little keychain with the world attached to it. They didn't conquer the world. They were conquered by love. And that's the meaning of Christmas, is that in the darkest of times, Israel, when was dominated by Rome, this was the worst thing the Jewish people could imagine. That the Romans were dominating Jerusalem, their sacred city. They were in control of the temple. This was the worst nightmare the Jewish people had. But in that darkest of times, to the most unlikely of sources, this bright, shining light of a baby showed up. It's a reminder to us, the world is not saved by force, but by love. Not by domination, but compassion. Not by brilliance, but by light. And so this season, let us all have a little bit of Pinky in us and a little bit of Brain. A little bit of brilliance and tenderness, of strategic and sincere, curious and compassion. Not that we take over the world through our control, but through our love. Because it's our love that's going to save us, and it's going to make the journey worth having. You are here so you can know yourself as a conduit for God's mercy and love and compassion, prosperity, health, and joy. And this is a season where we're reminded to forget a little bit of the turmoil in the world and come together in family and friends to remind each other and ourselves how valued we are, how necessary we are, how through our hearts and souls we can channel the mercy and goodness of God itself, that we can make manifest Spirit's love and joy exactly where we are and exactly what we are. You are Spirit's answer to every challenge the world is ever going to throw at you. You are beloved by God right where you are. You don't have to make changes. You don't have to get over challenges. Right as you are beloved. And as I said last week, there were a band of angels singing for the birth of Christ. Well, those angels haven't stopped singing, and they're still singing for you, singing that you can step up, step out, and be that bright, shining light of God's possibilities that you have come to be. It's the truth in your life this morning. It's the truth in mine, and so it is. Thank you.